Good morning, y'all. And it better be morning when you're watching this. Otherwise, this is Straight Face, the channel where I investigate stupid stuff and try to keep a straight face while saying ridiculous nonsense. You have probably heard of misconceptions, or lies that otherwise smart people repeat because they're too lazy to fact check. And it takes a second to blink, for God's sakes. But in any case, they provide me with an idea for a video, so I created a tier list of common misconceptions and how surprising I find them that people believe in them. The ranking are as follows: forgivable, for those that even I was surprised when I learned they were not true. Then we have believable, for those that I at least see why they're so popular and it's not the end of the world if people spout them. They are inconsequential is what I'm saying. Then we have murky, when it starts feeling that people should know better, but I still consider it to be an honest mistake that some people spread them. Second to last, ridiculous. Misconceptions that are so out there that I find it hard to believe that a significant amount of the population still believe them. Finally, we have dangerous. I am reserving this tier for misconceptions that are not only weird and dumb, but also can create real life harm and we should stop spreading as soon as possible. Well, those are the tiers. Without further ado, let's get to misconception busting. DM. Let's start by talking about everyone's favorite George Washington Carver. He was a scientist that advocated for crop rotations to improve soil, better nutrition through the cultivation of several different crops, environmentalism, and several uses for peanuts. I bet a lot of people would now say that one of those uses was peanut butter, because it took until the 19th century for someone to come up with the idea of grounding nuts. Pause. You know what I mean. In reality, pre-Columbian societies had already experimented with the incredible feat of turning chunky into smooth. Carver may have eaten the butter from peanuts, but that's because it was already in existence. He sure as nuts peas not popularized it either. I personally feel that this misconception, that such a distinguished person is today remembered for something he did not even do, is a disservice to one of the most important American scientists of the early 20th century. Therefore, I'm putting it under murky. Let's continue by discussing something we can all agree on. Flu and colds are caused by viruses. So why am I including this on the misconceptions? Well, let's say it is 30 degrees Fahrenheit, or minus 32 times 9 divided by 5, negative 1.1 degrees Celsius if you live outside America or Liberia. That does not sound right, Liberia. And I ask you to throw water over your head outside. You or most people would probably not do it, but not because it is uncomfortable. Instead, it is because we can't get away from the idea that cold temperature equals illness. Now, there is a little bit of truth to this misconception, as hypothermia is linked to decreased immune function, which can cause the virus inside you to cause the illness. But that's the key. Cold does not cause illness. It just makes a virus you already contracted more likely to make you sick. Therefore, I'm putting this one in the believable tier. Okay, let's play a little game called Can I Talk About This Without Getting Age Restricted? Harming the person that is oneself. Is it done for attention? About 17% of the population commit this act. In the US, that is about 53 million people. 50% of these break the skin with sharp objects. Then, with so many people suffering from these, how come we don't personally interact with as many of them? The answer is simple. We probably do. Perhaps all the time, unless you spend your days watching Bitcoin go up, then down, then up, etc., instead of going outside and pretend you can stand being around people. The fact that most of us don't notice most people who do this despite how prevalent it is, says it all about this misconception. People don't do this for attention. In fact, they tend to hide their wounds under long sweaters and pants when it is 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37.7 degrees Celsius. I'm putting this one on the dangerous because it does nothing but stigmatize mental illness. To continue, we must talk about the First Amendment of the United States. What I and many others consider to be the most important right afforded to Americans, this amendment stipulates that anyone can say what they want, practice what they believe in, etc., anywhere and anytime. Therefore, whenever advertisers decide that they do not want to be associated with somebody who thinks Himmler did not go far enough, it is a breach of our God-given rights. Except this is a fantasy. Let's read what the First Amendment actually says. Emphasis fine. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment or religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Essentially, no one is entitled to a platform to spout hateful views and dangerous propaganda. Whether you agree or not, big companies can prevent you from saying anything they want as they are not part of Congress. We can discuss how we give corporations with more power than whole countries more power than the strongest government on earth, but that has nothing to do with the First Amendment. This one goes under ridiculous just because it does not make sense on its face, and people who use this argument probably do not even believe their own nonsense. Now, this one goes out to my queer friends out there. Don't you hate it when Jack called you a, or even a, what is wrong with these people? Why can't they just accept you for whom you are? I know, you might say, they hate homosexuals because deep down they're even more fabulous than me, but won't accept it because of our repressed society. Oh, sweet little child. That is so stupid and incorrect. Before we go to sources, let me explain why I think this idea does not work. There are a lot of prejudices out there. Xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, misogyny, and even misandry. For including the last one, I cannot be legally called biased. I'll see you in court. Why do people hate other people that they see as different from themselves? Because a lot of people simply suck and trying to justify their dangerous ideas is a fool's errand. That does not make them anything other than bigots. If you don't believe this line of reasoning, first off, how dare you? My reasoning is impeccable. And second off, here's a source stating that there is no correlation between homophobia and closeted homosexuality. Finally, I would argue that there are few things more homophobic than saying that the biggest homosexuals are the biggest homophobes. I'm putting this one under ridiculous. Let's continue with this painting, American Gothic. Now, I'm about to blow your mind. Answer this. What is this painting of? You and I might say that it is about husband and wife. After all, the woman looks old enough to be married to someone who looks too old for her. It was the old days after all. Wrong. They are actually father and daughter, you incestuous monster. This will either ruin or improve specific instances of Rule 34, depending on how dirty you are. I'm putting this one under forgivable. As a side note, a hypothesis of mine is that the wife is the one painting, which is why she's not in the picture. Thus, this is an early example of the hidden agenda that women can excel at things. Now, let's open a window in Incognito Mode, shall we? Why? So that I can avoid being tracked while I look at totally legal and safe for work pages. They don't work like that. Wait, what? It only prevents your computer from keeping traces of your own activity. What do you mean Incognito Mode only prevents my computer from keeping traces of my online activity? Yeah, apparently not even Incognito Mode can prevent the government, big companies, the owners of the website you're visiting, or even ISPs from tracking you. So think about that the next time you search that thing in Incognito. You know what I mean. You are nasty and should go to jail. Anyway, I'm putting this one under forgivable. Next, we have microwaves. A lot of dumb people believe that microwaves heat food from the inside out instead of the outside in. Wait, hold on. It doesn't heat food that way? Well, isn't my face red? But you know, it makes all kinds of sense. How would microwave radiation skip all that content like it was laser guided until it hits the center and then radiates outwards? I don't like this one. It makes past me look stupid. Let's put it in forgivable and move on. To follow that up, let's examine the belief that the majority of people did not tend to live to old age during the Middle Ages. You know, like how if you were a man over 15, you were old enough to get a pension, or if you were an unmarried 18-year-old woman, they burned you at the stake for having wasted all your ovaries or something. In reality, low life expectancies were due to the fact that children tended to die a disproportionate amount compared to older adults. This was due to things like disease and infant mortality rates. Thank God we as a society have decided that modern medicine and healthy habits are good actually. So if you were to be reincarnated in the Middle Ages, can reincarnation happen like this? For the sake of argument, let's assume so. You'll probably die, but not of old age at 25, but because it was considered common sense that you had to shake a crying child after feeding them mercury. I'm putting this one under believable just because things like life expectancies can be hard to wrap one's head around. Let's move on from expiring children to something fun. Missing person reports. Stop me if you have heard this one. Grandpa decides he's had enough of you ruining Thanksgiving by stating that turkey is disgusting. Which it is. So he decides to go take a walk. It is 8 hours later and no one is able to reach him. Worse still, his last Facebook update complaining about Indian people taking American jobs was a whole 8 hours ago. All signs point to Granddad being abducted for that sweet bingo money. However, you cannot file a police report because it has not been 24 hours yet. So you had to wait for 16 more hours and just hope that Grandpappy comes around. This is of course false, but not only is it false, it is also counterproductive. After all, any second that passes after being reasonably sure that someone is in danger is a second that could have been used to search for a missing person. Even if the person turns out to be okay, it is better safe than sorry with these situations. I don't know how this misconception arose, maybe from police precincts too lazy to hunt for another teen who is taking it up the after telling their parents that they did it too when they were teenagers. Needless to say, this one goes under dangerous. Speaking of danger, let me shine a light to enemy numero uno for both environmentalists and fossil fuel producers: nuclear power. If you watch The Simpsons, you probably think of nuclear energy as a source of mutations, apocalypses, and the destruction of the environment. In reality, there is estimated to be 0.03 deaths per terawatt produced by nuclear energy. This includes the deaths generated by the Chernobyl and Fukushima disasters. How many deaths are attributable to fossil fuels? It depends on the source. It goes as high as 24.6 deaths per terawatt produced by coal to 18.4 for oil and 2.8 for natural gas. This means, on average, 15.27 deaths can be attributed directly to the production of fossil fuels, not taking into account indirect deaths like those caused by human-made climate change. Yet, as of June 2024, there were 210 nuclear reactors permanently shut down worldwide, mostly because of this pervasive misconception. So I'm putting this one under dangerous, as it will literally cause a lot of suffering. Let's move on from that to a topic that will cause no controversy whatsoever: human overpopulation. Popularized in the 18th century by cleric and economist Thomas Malthus, the idea is that since population growth is exponential, while food supply growth is linear, famine and wars for ever more scarce resources are inevitable. Looking at the past, this seems to make sense. After all, it took until around 1804 for the human population to reach 1 billion. Then population doubled to 2 billion in just 123 years, then doubled again in 37 years to 4 billion. If population increases exponentially, this must mean that population must have doubled again in 49 years? Hold on, let me run some calculations. Apparently 49 is less than 37. What does this mean? Basically, humanity is probably done with its growth spurt. In 2021, 110 out of 204 countries and territories had fertility rates below 2.1, the rate needed to keep population from declining, with the number expected to increase to around 188 countries by the end of the century. Not that everything is great just because we probably won't have to live in the ocean due to running out of land. We will still have to deal with an increase in the average age of the population, probably spending the end of that whole retiring business, as there aren't enough children to send to the mines, where they belong. But this is a story for another day. I'm putting this misconception under murky, as a simple search of population decline will dispel this widely believed idea, but people still love to fearmonger about it. So, the pyramids. Unless you believe that Bill Gates is currently working on updating the software for those chips implanted on people who like to avoid preventable diseases, you might believe that they were built by slaves. Regardless, this is not true. You see, not only were the pyramid builders not slaves, but they were also skilled laborers. Evidence of this includes remains of high quality food that no self-respecting slave owner would possibly feed the help, relatively nice sleeping accommodations, and honorable burials. Not that building such structures was not backbreaking labor, but as anyone working retail might tell you, sometimes you just gotta get paid. Since this one is so pervasive in the world religions like Christianity and Judaism, as well as media inspired by them, I can't help but put this one on believable. After all, Egyptians did have slaves, just not to build the pyramids. Okay, Santa Claus. The only overweight person that we as a culture have decided is okay to let children look up to. We all see him in the malls having children sitting on his lap like stranger danger never happened. The white beard, the red clothes, the hat, the shiny nose, the black boots. You know what? You know what Santa looks like. Why am I wasting my time? The point is that despite being a less than real character, we have a specific look in mind when we think of Santa Claus. This look is so set in stone that changing something like his skin color will make a certain subsection of the "I'm not racist" but crowd foam at the mouth. Those people paradoxically might also believe that this look came about recently because of a big corporation, Coca-Cola. Nothing further from the truth though. No, it took a long time and several artists to come up with this look. At least by 1906, decades before Carver Coke with its Coca-less sugar drink, hashtag bring back the original Coke, used it in its advertisements, the image of Saint Nick was already in the public imagination. I'm putting this on murky because it just seems weird to me that there is this belief that a soda company has so much influence in the world as to create a character so well known as to become a Christmas competitor to Jesus. Now let's tackle language. This one is a doozy. You see, there is this idea that sign languages are mutually intelligible, if not essentially dialects of one another. After all, they all use gestures and facial expressions, so they must be understood by everybody who understands sign language, right? Well, no. There is no such a thing as a single sign language. American Sign Language is as foreign to those who use Indo-Pakistani Sign Language as English is to Hindi and Pakistani. This one goes under ridiculous, as I can now understand why people would think that languages with different names are the same just because they have sign in front of them. So, da or di, I hate this word. And not because it has two completely different pronunciations while being spelled the same. Okay, it is mostly because of that. But also I do not like the way it is spelled. I mean, look at this. The most used word in the English language is spelled like this. How about we go back to the old spelling and pronunciation of this word? Ye. Except, well, it is not that simple. Apparently, just because parts that try to invoke a view of the past and believe they wouldn't be robbed at sword point by pirates they won't use it, it does not mean that it is pronounced ye. Instead, it used to have the character thorn, which is pronounced similar to th, and changed to this symbol with the early printing press. Therefore, in Old English, these are pronounced the same, the. But language always evolves, so nothing is stopping us from just saying ye instead of the. We will be insufferable for a few generations, but given enough time, only wrestlers will use it. Where was I? Oh yeah, tier list. Believable, because English pronunciation is equivalent to a drunken uncle slurring words. Now let's continue with a question. What does theory mean? Well, that depends on how often your parents dropped you as a baby. If the answer is a high number, then you will say that a theory is just a guess from some rando. If the answer is a low number, then you will answer that it depends on context. It is true that in regular parlance, a theory might just be something a weirdo on the internet made up while complaining that their third eye itches when it is about to rain. But in science, a theory is a well-tested hypothesis that can be used to predict observations, pass tests, and explain facts. Hence, something being a theory does not make it any less plausible than something being a law of nature. Now, does that mean that things like the theory of evolution, or plate tectonics, or cell theory are pseudoscience? No. Why? Simply put, there is no such a thing as pseudoscience. New evidence could come out tomorrow that shows that we are actually living inside the mind of a child with severe mental delay, which I would argue explains too much of our current world to not be considered at least a hypothesis worth pursuing. But that's the beauty of science. It is not set in stone and things can change all the time. Nevertheless, that does not mean anyone can dismiss scientific theories unless they have a scientific theory of their own that explains the processes that the original theory explained. In any case, I am putting this misconception under ridiculous, because people who use it only do so because they have run out of ways to justify their dumb beliefs against scientific reasoning. I am leaving this one with a quote by yours truly. Just because something isn't truth with a capital T does not mean it is not true. Next, I am going to ruin a Doomsday Prepper's Day. Must be my birthday. We have all heard of how the Twinkie is made up of so many chemicals that it is essentially immortal. I would argue that something man-made that does not expire should not be considered food, and Twinkie deniers would agree. In reality, just like every food, Twinkies eventually deteriorate. If they did not, I would argue that there would be a lot of side effects from eating a lot of them. But Twinkies are not any more dangerous than any other forms of junk food. That is, relatively dangerous, but not too dangerous. The regular type of danger that comes from eating too much sugar and watching commentary channels on a loop. Twinkies only have a shelf life of about 25 years? This one goes under believable because that is still too long. Let's finish this list with the idea of the alpha wolf. People with more than one restraining order often argue that there are different classes of men in society. The all-beloved alpha male and the beta followers. There are also sigmas, omegas, deltas, iotas, terriers, sphinxes, or whatever other categories the manosphere wants to make up this week to make immature teenage boys feel like they are special. But for the sake of argument, let's stick to alphas and betas. The idea is that alphas are the leaders. They make the rules, get all the women, etc., while the betas follow orders and watch their wives get nasty with the alphas from afar. Now, where did this idea come from? Observational data from history and current human mating behaviors? Philosophical debates? Anecdotes? Reddit? No. In actuality, this distinction between human men came about because a scientist saw some wolves behaving in this hierarchical fashion while in captivity. Let's put aside the all-important fact that we are attributing human interactions based on how one animal behaves, thus ignoring all others where this idea does not hold true. It has been shown that this does not even hold true to wolves when not in captivity. got me shocked that such a reasonable crowd as people who think Jordan Peterson is the second coming of Christ based one of their fundamental beliefs on a myth that would not make any sense even if true. As misconceptions go, this one is straight up dangerous. It has turned a lot of young men into entitled, rude, misogynistic incels, which is why I feel it is time to let this misconception die. Now let's see the final score. As you can see, it's very evenly spaced, mostly in the believables, because again, misconceptions spread, or at least tend to spread for a reason. Some of these make more sense than others. Some are just, what? What is going on with some of these? I don't know what's going on with some of these. Do you agree with my assessments? Put it down in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe. Also follow me on X at FacedStraight. Thank you and have a good rest of your day.